welcome you all to the launch this evening of Dublin, The View from Above by Dennis Horgan. Great to see that so many people from the Dublin Brigade of Genesis Circle have turned out. And as you probably have observed already, there's a celebratory glass available here along the counter. The book is on sale over here. One for €25, two for €40. So this might be your last chance to get 2 signed copies at a special price. And I want to thank everybody who helped in organising tonight's launch, including the staff here. And Dennis himself is going to express his appreciation to the various other companies and organisations who have contributed to tonight's launch. To begin with, we'll have a few words from Paul Camden, who is Group Marketing Director of Topaz Energy Group. So there's Paul Camden.
Thanks very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for turning up for a really wonderful event. I think back to 2014 when I first met Dennis, and my instant impression was a man who had drive, passion, enthusiasm, well-structured and a plan, right? And that's a good way of getting money out of Topaz, okay? So I was introduced to Dennis just after he did the Cork View from the Sky, and it was just brilliant because my mom's a Cork woman, so I duly brought home the book. I called over to my parents and said, here, I've got a present for your mom, and she was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable, this is brilliant. So I knew we were onto a good thing, and when Dennis came back in January of this year with a plan to do the Dublin book, we said absolutely, no problem whatsoever. So Sean Corkery, who's a friend of Dennis's and is on the board of Topaz, was very keen on driving this on, and we got behind it. So Dennis gave us regular updates and photographed it to me throughout the year of what was going on, and I was really impressed. And here we have today the launch, and I'm really proud to be here on behalf of Topaz, supporting Dennis, and wish Dennis the very best on this. He's a great guy, he's got, as I say, passion, enthusiasm, and he really has talent. This is a special book, and I think it's going to sell out very quickly. I'd encourage you all to grab it, because we're going to be buying lots of copies for our corporate clients, and you know, you've got to get it while you can. So Dennis, the very best, and well done. It's a fantastic product. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Those adjectives there, like well-structured, well-organised, fantastic, they all apply to Dennis, but we didn't become aware of them until after we had started working with him. Anyway, to launch the book, we have Pat Kenny, who I'm sure you're all very familiar with, an award-winning presenter with radio and television. But I have to compliment Pat on making the early years of my life on a Saturday evening much brighter than would have been down in Cork when he was presenting the outside track, and we could hear music that we didn't normally get to hear anywhere else. So, I'm also delighted that Pat accepted our invitation to write a foreword for the book, and as I said to him there just a few minutes ago, I think it shows that there's an alternative career available to him if times ever get tough again. Anyway, to launch the book, Pat Kenny.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening. There are so many reasons on so many levels why I am delighted to be involved in this beautiful book about Dublin. The first reason, of course, is that when Dennis asked me, you don't refuse a man like Dennis. He is utterly persuasive. When I saw the Cork book, which I haven't seen at the time of its publication, but Dennis sent me a copy, I suddenly got Cork. Now I know I'm in the presence of so many Cork people here, but for a Dubliner who has no Cork relations whatsoever, trying to figure out Cork City is a complete mystery to me. I mean, Then someone told me a couple of years ago, the reason, Pat, you get lost all the time is that the river divides in two. I thought I was dealing with the same river all the time. It's no wonder I was dealing with the same river, but the same channel all the time. And I'd be going to RT when it was in Father Matthew Key and getting totally confused. I got the Cork book and suddenly everything was explained. So I thought to myself, for Cork people who rarely, as you know, come to the real capital, I thought Dennis would be just the man to provide a book that would make sense of Dublin to Cork people. And that's precisely what he has done. The other reason, though, that this book is precious to me is that my first job was in a place called Hodger's Laboratories on Parkgate Street in Dublin, and my job was to develop and print film. And I developed a lifelong interest in photography, and to this day I still have cameras, some of them film, some of them digital, and of course my phone probably has superseded them all, but I still have a great interest in photography. In fact, this very morning on News Talk, I interviewed a young woman called Aoife Moggan, and I can recommend that you chase out her photographs. She's a young woman who was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 12, and for the last 17 years she has been in and out of hospital. Half her life spent in hospital, but in recent times she's taken to taking photographs in hospital, and they are just amazing and cute and clever and artistic, and I was delighted to have her on as part of my ongoing interest in photography. But Hodges Laboratories was interesting because I was actually fired. I was fired before I was old enough to work. I was 13 years of age, and the factory inspector called. And I remember I was called up before the factory inspector, and the factory inspector said, "How old are you?" And I said, I'm 13, sir. And he said, 13. Do you ever go on messages? Do you ever deliver the prints and the orders to people? And I truthfully, I spent most of my time in the darkroom or in the pricing section. I said, no, I don't. And behind me, behind the factories inspector, all the guys were going, yes, yes, yes. And I say, no. And he said, are you sure? Do you never even go out to buy provisions or buy supplies? And I answered truthfully, no, I don't. I'm sorry, sir, I don't. Should I? And he said nothing. He said, no. Are you sure you never go on messages? You don't have a bike or anything? And I said, no, sir, I don't. And then he told me, well, I'm afraid you're too old to work, or too young to work in a factory. And I was fired. Had I been a messenger boy, I would have been able to continue. The other thing that comes from that time with photography, I bought, anyone old enough here to remember the Brownie 127? A camera, a film camera. And I bought a camera from a fella for £0.50, and I thought this was the bargain of a lifetime, until I got the roll of film developed in Hodges Laboratories, and it was leaking light into the camera. It was a lesson I learned very young, that there's no such thing as a cheap camera or a free lunch. Looking at the book, which Dennis has produced and so ably captured Dublin, it is a masterpiece, that's all I can say. It gives a sense of Dublin, it makes sense of Dublin in a way that when you're at street level, it's very hard to comprehend. I mean, this is an old city, a medieval city, unlike many modern cities which are laid out in avenues and streets and blocks. Dublin is not laid out like that. But from the air, you can make so much sense of Dublin. The place that is, for example, Dolphin House up in Dolphin's Barn, which Dennis has a picture of, a place badly in need of restoration and refurbishment, which process has been in progress for a number of years now. And you might criticize the planners for doing what they did. Yet when you see it from the air, you said the planners didn't do a half-bad job. It was the poverty and the social deprivation which brought havoc on that area of Dolphin's Barn, and happily order is being restored, but the planners have done a great job. My Dublin, well, it's many Dublins. It's the Dublin of Phoenix Park, of the Magazine Hill, of Dublin Zoo, where my father worked, of McKee Barracks, where you'd often see the soldiers drilling, and also see the soldiers on horseback, the captains and lieutenants riding into the Phoenix Park, and then you might catch a glimpse of them in the RDS during the horse show week. It's the polo grounds in Dublin Zoo. It's the North Circle Road where the cattle market used to be, and the abattoir. Never thought too much about what went on inside the abattoir. But that was the Dublin of my childhood. The childhood that embraced, say, Mountjoy Square, which was squalid, which was full of tenements, and where I, as a young Legion of Mary member at the age of 14, used to climb up 5 or 6 flights of stairs into a squalid little flat to try and teach a fella how to solve mathematical problems. It was the Dublin of the liberties. My uncle Jack, he was the superintendent of the fruit and vegetable market, but his home was in a house supplied by Dublin Corporation on Francis Street beside the old clothes market. So that was part of our hunting ground. Myra House, where the St. Vincent de Paul were based, I used to go there. St. Nicholas of Myra was the saint after whom it was named. I used to go there to watch the youth club doing Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream. My Dublin then extended down around Ballybough and Croke Park, out to Clontarf, where we were tortured every Wednesday afternoon, being forced to play football in the freezing cold. And then as I got older, my Dublin extended into the south side. Although I was born in Holles Street, it extended into the south side, and the College of Science, which was Marion Street, the College of Engineering, now government buildings, Donny's and Esbit's, O'Donoghue's pub, the Bagot Inn, and all of those places, and eventually out to Dublin 4, where I worked for some 40 years. So my Dublin is everywhere. I live now out in the leafy suburbs, the seaside suburbs of Dalkey, and I'm delighted to see that Dennis has captured some images from Bullock Harbour. You haven't got my house in, but you've got pretty much everything else. It really embraces all of Dublin. The architectural gems, both modern and ancient, things I didn't appreciate as a child, are all laid out here in their majesty. I'm told that Dennis spent his time hanging out of a helicopter, risking life and limb. But whatever the dangers he put himself through, whatever the risks that were involved, and indeed the pain and hardship of doing all of that, I must say he did a magnificent job, and I am very happy, as well as writing forward to this book, to soundly launch it tonight. Well done to you, Dennis.
Compared to what's going to come next, hanging out of a helicopter was always recreation for me. I just want to thank you all for coming, and I know a lot of you have come a distance, and I'm grateful to you for coming along. It's a compliment to me that you should do so, and I'd like you to indulge me for a few minutes to thank the people who made this book a reality. I didn't realise when I started the project that so many people would become involved, and all the place that we would have to do to get the number of images for the book. I live in Cork, so Dublin is 160 miles away, even though we've got a wonderful road now. I had to make a lot of trips up, and some of them were disappointing when I was told by the guys in the National Flight Centre, look, we can't fly today, we can't do this, we can't do that. So when we got the good days, we made the most of them. When I went out to the National Flight Centre, I met one of the lads who should be nameless, and said, look, I'm thinking of doing this area of Book of Cork, I need to know your charges. Well, he said, we've got 2 classes here. He said, we've economy and first class. He said, with economy they give you a plane. And I said, what's the first class? You get a pilot as well, the first class. I was extraordinarily lucky that I did get 2 great pilots, and I think they're both here tonight, Alan O'Loughlin and Mark O'Neill, and I want to say thanks very much to them, because they deserve a round of applause. They were absolutely amazing because they knew where everything was. Dublin was different to kettle of fish to Cork because everything is compressed in Dublin. Dublin, as you well know, is a much smaller county than Cork. And parochial again. But it's a massive city. It's a huge city, and everything is close by. The Custom House is just across from Wood Quay, and then you've got St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I feel I know Dublin now better than I did, But we got it done, and I'm grateful to the lads at the National Flight Centre for all their help. They went way out of their way. I think it's only from a height that you can appreciate places, particularly like Dublin, where, as Pat said, you know, where the old sits with the new, sometimes maybe uncomfortably, but it's lovely to see the difference. And if you look at, say, the Custom House and look across the river, you'll see the St. George's Plaza, that modern, striking building that says so much about modern Ireland and modern Dublin, you know. So I'm going to start by saying thanks very much to Pat Kenny for doing this for me this evening, but almost as much thankful for the wonderful, provocative, sublime foreword he wrote that resonates with his love for his native city. So thank you very much, Pat. I sometimes, you know, tend not to look at the bottom line in terms of costs sometimes. Aircraft by their nature are very expensive items, and they're also very expensive to hire. And in order to kind of put myself a bit at ease, I decided this time I'd go ahead and see if I could find a few victims. So when I met Sean Corkery and Paul Camden and Topaz, they were extremely helpful, and they were, look, they just let me to it. They said, go ahead and do it, we'll look after things, and they did. Also I joined with them as Ken MacDonald of Horgan MacDonald Auctioneers in Dublin, who also said to me, look, go and do it, we'll gladly support you. And you know, this is big business being nice, generally. Nobody said you must do this, you must do that. They left it to me, and fair play to them, you know. Nobody came and said anything to me. They just were delighted, and I'd like to thank all of those. As Leslie Buckley said to me in the early days, he said, it's amazing how creative you can get yourself when you're overhead taking care of, you know. So I'm very grateful, and as I mentioned Leslie Buckley, I'm very grateful to Leslie too, because Leslie has always helped me and always given me advice and opened doors to me, and this home is no exception. So I don't know, I think Leslie's gone, but I'd just like to record my thanks to him. I also had some help in Dublin. Is, you know, very busy airspace. There are planes coming in like flies from the east, right into Dublin over Hope. So the problem of getting a plane into that airspace was difficult, but you know, there were times when we couldn't go anywhere north of Croke Park. But I'd like to thank Angelo Cunningham, Captain Angelo Cunningham is here this evening, for his advice in doing the flight planning for me. I'd also like to say thanks to Marcus Carrington for writing the text, and to Peter Rafter, architect, for all the information he gave us in the historic buildings. Bit of a typo on one of them, Peter, but they're going to stop you here. Coming up and down from Cork was a bit, you know, it's hard. As I said, it's a bit of a nightmare, but I want to mention lots of people who gave me a home from home in Dublin when I had to stay overnight, when the weather might be good tomorrow and give it a crack. I wanted to say thanks to my friend Michael Horgan for his advice and for letting me use his house in Rackgar as a home for home, and apologies, Mike, that I'm using it now as a bookstore. I'm grateful to you, Mike, I know you know that. I'd also like to say thanks to Hugh and Catherine O'Donnell in Dalkey for letting me stay in their lovely place, and every morning I woke up and saw views of the bay, so thanks to both of you as well. My brother, who is here this evening, he's a bit publicity shy, but he's been a great help to me, Pat. I couldn't have done it without you either, because in the background you were always there to help me. There's one other person, and I'm not saying it last because in order of any kind of hierarchy, but I want to say to my partner Deirdre, thank you, love, for all you did for me. You were an amazing girl, and you gave me so much help, and this book is yours as much as mine. Thank you. I said in my introduction that it's a capital city we can all be proud of, and it's an amazing place because everywhere you look there are the most gorgeous buildings. You know, it doesn't have beaches as much as, say, you know, the western or the southern counties have, but it's a beautiful place, and as I said, it's a lovely place to explore on foot, but it's much nicer from above. When you look at, my favourite picture of the whole book is the War Memorial Gardens in Island Bridge. You look at the care the gardens have taken with the place, the respect they give it, and it's a beautiful monument to the fallen of the Great War. And there's lots of other places like that. The Royal Hospital in Kilmainham, the gardens are beautiful. So I hope the book gives you a sense of what Dublin really looks like from up there, because you won't see it from an Aer Lingus jet coming out of Dublin. You're well on your way at that stage. So I hope you enjoy the book, and thank you all so much for coming. And if I've forgotten anybody, forgive me. Thank you.
I just want to say one or two things. Number one, I think we all got a great insight there into the sort of philosophy behind Pat Kinney's broadcasting down through the years, and the fairness and equanimity that he brings to everything. And there's no doubt that walking up 5 or 6 or 7 flights upstairs to look after people who are less well off when you're a youngster with the Legion of Mary would bring a bit of balance into your life. So that gives me, as I say, an insight into the way he handles a lot of interviews. Guinness was faced with enormous challenges during the year, because every time he made out a flight schedule, the weather forecast got worse, the clouds came in, the depressions came in, and at one stage we were considering deferring the book until 2016. But then we felt we didn't want to be competing with all the other 1916 books, so we forged ahead, and with his own determination and stamina, we got the job done. So, well done, Dennis. Other than that, I hope you all enjoyed the rest of the evening, and as I said earlier on, avail of the opportunity to get multiple signed copies of a book which you can use as a Christmas present, a birthday present, and a New Year present. Thank you all very much.